I am Jason, 34 years old, and until 2 years ago, I thought I knew what family meant. After building my software career from nothing, I had finally achieved financial stability. Then came my brother Kevin's business proposal and my refusal to invest $200,000. What followed was a nightmare of stalking, harassment, and betrayal that culminated in something I never imagined: my own brother attempting to steal my life savings. Before I dive into this nightmare, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if family betrayal stories make your blood boil like mine did. Growing up in our middle-class suburban neighborhood in Boston, our family seemed normal from the outside. My parents, Robert and Linda, raised Kevin and me with what I thought were the same values and expectations. Our house was modest but comfortable. A 3-bedroom colonial on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of orange and red every fall. From an early age, the differences between Kevin and me became apparent. While I was drawn to books and computers, spending hours learning programming languages and solving math problems, Kevin was the social butterfly. He captivated rooms with his charm and quick wit. Everyone loved Kevin, especially our parents, who beamed with pride when he became football captain or won student body president. I was the academically gifted child who worked relentlessly for everything. My report cards were perfect, but they were simply expected. Kevin brought home C's and D's, but he always received endless praise for the occasional B. Look how hard he tried, my mother would say, pinning his rare achievements to the refrigerator while my academic awards gathered dust in a drawer. During high school, I took advanced placement classes and worked weekends at the local electronics store to save for college. Kevin spent his time partying and dating, confident that things would always work out. When college application time came, I received several scholarships but still needed more to cover expenses. My parents explained they had limited college savings that needed to be split fairly, which meant that despite Kevin's mediocre grades, we received equal financial support. To make ends meet during college, I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 4-point GPA in computer science at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. My schedule was brutal: morning shifts at the campus coffee shop, afternoons in the computer lab as a teaching assistant, and weekend tech support calls. Sleep became a luxury. Meanwhile, Kevin attended community college, sporadically dropping classes whenever they became too stressful while enjoying the full college social experience. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level position at a promising software startup. The salary was modest, but the potential for growth was tremendous. I continued living like a student, renting a tiny studio apartment and eating ramen noodles to maximize my savings. Every dollar mattered in my careful financial plan. Within 5 years, my dedication paid off. Our company's valuation skyrocketed after we developed a revolutionary data security algorithm. My stock options suddenly held real value, and my salary tripled with each promotion. Still, I maintained my frugal lifestyle, driving the same reliable sedan and limiting luxuries. My savings account grew steadily, and at 30, I purchased my first home, a comfortable 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with excellent security. During these years, the distance between Kevin and me widened into a canyon. After bouncing between 6 different majors, he eventually dropped out of college entirely. He moved back home with our parents, working occasional retail jobs that never lasted more than a few months. Kevin just hasn't found his passion yet, my mother would explain during our increasingly infrequent family dinners. Kevin developed a pattern of entrepreneurial ventures that followed the same cycle: initial excitement, requests for family funding, early problems, and inevitable collapse. There was the lawn care business that folded after he failed to maintain the equipment, the phone case customization company that produced defective products, and the food delivery service that collapsed when Kevin routinely showed up hours late with cold food. Each failure was met with unwavering support from our parents, both emotionally and financially. They repeatedly dipped into their retirement savings to fund Kevin's ventures or cover his rent when he eventually moved into his own apartment, only to be evicted twice for non-payment. When I gently suggested Kevin might benefit from financial counseling, my parents accused me of being unsupportive. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. As my career flourished, Kevin's resentment grew palpable. Snide comments about corporate sellouts and how money isn't everything became his standard responses to any mention of my work. My parents reinforced this dynamic, often saying things like, "Not everyone measures success by a paycheck, Jason," as if my career was simply about money rather than passion for technology and the satisfaction of building something valuable. Despite the tension, I continued trying to maintain family relationships. I never mentioned my promotions or achievements to avoid triggering Kevin's jealousy. I brought thoughtful gifts to family gatherings and listened patiently to Kevin's latest business ideas without criticism. I helped my parents with home repairs and technological problems, spending entire weekends installing new appliances or upgrading their computer systems. The dynamics shifted subtly after our father had a minor heart attack when I was 32. During his recovery, I paid several of their medical bills without mentioning it, knowing their insurance had substantial gaps. I also hired a weekly cleaning service to help my mother manage the household during this stressful time. Kevin visited the hospital once, leaving early to attend a party, explaining that sitting around in hospitals is depressing. In retrospect, I realized that was the beginning of the end, the moment when my parents' perception of me temporarily shifted from reliable but boring son to potential financial safety net. The calculated looks, the casual mentions of Kevin's struggles, the reminiscing about family always supporting family, all took on new meaning in light of what would come next. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was finishing a remote debugging session with my team. Kevin sounded unusually upbeat, asking to meet for dinner to catch up and discuss something exciting. Though wary, I agreed to meet him at Morton's Steakhouse the following evening, hoping this might be a chance to repair our increasingly strained relationship. Kevin arrived 20 minutes late, dressed in an ill-fitting suit that still had the security tag partially attached to one sleeve. He ordered the most expensive items on the menu: Wagyu steak, lobster tail, and a $300 bottle of wine. Throughout the appetizers, he spoke animatedly about attending a business seminar that had completely changed his perspective on entrepreneurship. "This is different from all my other ideas, Jason," Kevin insisted, eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "I found my true calling. The sports memorabilia market is exploding right now, and I've developed a revolutionary platform to connect buyers and sellers." As he outlined his concept for signedlegends.com, I listened attentively, wanting to be supportive despite my growing reservations. His business plan contained alarming red flags: revenue projections based on guaranteed 30% monthly growth, marketing strategies centered around viral social media campaigns, and customer acquisition costs that seemed implausibly lifeless. Low. When the dessert menus arrived, Kevin finally reached the point of our meeting. "I need $200,000 to launch properly," he stated casually, as if requesting lunch money. "With your investment, we could secure premium inventory, build the website, and market aggressively. You will get 30% equity and guaranteed returns within 6 months." I asked logical questions about his market research, competitive analysis, and contingency plans. Kevin's answers grew increasingly vague and defensive. When I requested to see financial projections and a formal business plan, he dismissed my concerns as typical corporate overthinking and insisted I should trust his vision. "I will think about it and do some research," I promised, wanting to be respectful rather than dismissive. Kevin's expression hardened slightly, but he nodded clearly, expecting quick approval. Over the next week, I thoroughly investigated the sports memorabilia market. I spoke with 2 colleagues who collected sports items and consulted with a friend who worked in e-commerce platform development. What I discovered was concerning the market was already saturated with established players. Authentication issues were rampant, and the startup costs for proper inventory verification technology alone would exceed $100,000. I arranged a video call with Michael, a trusted colleague, who had successfully launched several startups before joining our company. After reviewing Kevin's limited materials, Michael was blunt. "This has disaster written all over it. The numbers don't add up, and there's no competitive advantage. If he were pitching to real investors, he would be laughed out of the room." Despite knowing it would cause tension, I called Kevin to decline investing. I carefully explained my concerns about market saturation and unrealistic projections, while offering alternatives. I could help with a smaller $5,000 investment to test the concept, provide technical assistance for website development, or connect him with mentors in the e-commerce space. Kevin's reaction was immediate and explosive. "You think you're so much better than me," he shouted. "You've always been jealous of my ideas. You just want me to fail." He hung up after declaring I would regret not getting in on the opportunity of a lifetime. Within 30 minutes, my phone was ringing with calls from both parents. My mother was crying, saying I was crushing Kevin's dreams. My father was more direct. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by refusing to help your brother when he finally has a solid plan." I calmly explained my concerns about the business model and reiterated my offers of alternative support. Their response was dismissive. "Kevin needs real support, not your condescending handouts. If you were truly successful, $200,000 would be nothing to you." The following Sunday, I reluctantly attended our monthly family dinner, hoping to smooth things over. The atmosphere was glacial. Kevin refused to make eye contact, responding to my attempts at conversation with one-word answers. My parents maintained a coordinated silent treatment, speaking only when absolutely necessary and in clipped tones. During dessert, my mother casually mentioned that she and my father had decided to remortgage their house to help Kevin launch his business. My stomach dropped at this revelation. They were in their 60s with limited retirement savings, and their house was their primary asset. Kevin shot me a triumphant smirk across the table. "Are you sure that's wise?" I asked carefully. "There are significant risks involved." "Some people believe in supporting family no matter what," my father replied coldly. "Not everyone abandons their blood when they need help." I left dinner with a knot in my stomach, conflicted, but certain about my financial decision. The business was fundamentally flawed, and investing would only delay the inevitable failure while losing my savings in the process. What I didn't realize was that my refusal had crossed an invisible line, one that would transform family tension into something far more sinister. The first signs appeared the next morning. An aunt I rarely spoke with sent a Facebook message. "How could you be so selfish? Family should come first." A cousin posted a vague status update about wealthy relatives who hoard their money while watching family struggle. By evening, my social media accounts were flooded with similar messages from extended family members, all clearly operating on limited and distorted information. I closed my laptop unsettled, but still unaware that this was merely the opening salvo in what would become a coordinated campaign of harassment, intimidation, and ultimately criminal behavior that would test the very limits of familial bonds. The first unannounced visit came 3 days after the disastrous family dinner. I had just returned from work when my doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by aggressive knocking. Through the security peephole, I saw my mother and father standing on my porch, expressions grim and determined. "We need to talk about reconsidering Kevin's proposal," my father announced when I opened the door. For 2 uncomfortable hours, they alternated between emotional appeals and thinly veiled guilt tactics. "When you were in college, we went without vacations to help you." My mother reminded me, conveniently forgetting my 3 jobs and scholarships that covered most expenses. That visit established a pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, family members appeared at my home at increasingly inconvenient hours. An uncle arrived at 6:30 in the morning before I left for work. My cousin stopped by at 11 at night, claiming he just happened to be in the neighborhood. Each visit included the same rehearsed speech about family loyalty and Kevin's brilliant business opportunity. The phone calls were even more disruptive. Kevin began calling at all hours, his approach swinging wildly between extremes. Some calls featured tearful pleas about how much the business meant to him and how I was destroying his last chance at success. Others contained explicit threats. "You'll regret turning your back on family, or I know where you live, where you work, and who you care about." After blocking Kevin's number, he simply used different phones. At work, our receptionist reported receiving up to 15 calls daily from someone demanding to speak with me about an urgent family matter. My concentration suffered, and for the first time in my career, I missed project deadlines. The situation escalated when my parents began spreading rumors throughout our extended family network. Distant relatives I hadn't seen in years sent accusatory messages. A second cousin wrote, "I always thought you were the good brother, but now everyone knows you abandoned your family when they needed you." My aunt told mutual acquaintances I had become arrogant and forgotten my roots. One evening while preparing dinner, I noticed a blue sedan parked across from my house. The driver sat motionless, occasionally using his phone. 3 hours later, the car remained in the same spot. Unnerved, I wrote down the license plate number and called the non-emergency police line. By the time an officer arrived, the vehicle had departed. 2 days later, I spotted the same car and recognized the driver, Kevin, slouched down in the seat watching my house. My professional reputation came under attack next. Anonymous negative reviews appeared on my company website and professional profiles. Worked with Jason Thompson. He is unethical and betrays commitments. Do not trust this person with your business. Though the allegations were vague, their sudden appearance and timing were clearly coordinated. The pressure intensified as family, friends, and acquaintances began contacting me. My mother's bridge partner called to express concern about my mental state and strange decision to abandon family. My father's golfing buddy emailed suggesting I seek counseling for my selfishness and greed. Each interaction followed the same script, suggesting coordinated talking points distributed by my parents. The first physical confrontation occurred 28 days after I declined Kevin's investment proposal. At 10:15 on a Friday night, thunderous pounding on my front door jolted me awake. Through the security camera, I saw Kevin swaying unsteadily, clearly intoxicated, screaming demands to be let in. When I refused, he kicked my door repeatedly, denting the lower panel before urinating on my porch and staggering away. The incident prompted me to install comprehensive security cameras covering all approaches to my home. The system included motion detection, night vision, and cloud backup storage, an investment of $3,000 that would prove invaluable in the months ahead. Just 4 days later, I received an alert from my security system while at work. The footage showed Kevin circling my car with a key or similar object, deliberately scratching deep lines into the paint. The repair estimate totaled $4,200. With the clear video evidence, I filed my first police report. The responding officer, Jenkins, viewed the footage with a frown. Family disputes are complicated, he noted, but vandalism is still a crime regardless of who commits it. He recommended I pursue a restraining order and document all future incidents. When my parents learned about the police report, their response was immediate and hostile. "How could you involve the police over a little scratch?" my mother demanded during yet another unannounced visit. Kevin was just upset. Brothers fight sometimes. My father was more threatening. "If you press charges, you'll no longer be welcome in this family." The constant stress began affecting my health. I developed insomnia, lying awake monitoring security camera feeds on my phone. My normally healthy appetite disappeared, and I lost 11 pounds in 3 weeks. During meetings, I found myself zoning out, constantly checking my phone for security alerts. Michael, my colleague, who had advised against investing in Kevin's business, noticed the changes. After a particularly distracted meeting, he invited me to lunch and listened as I finally shared the full situation. "This isn't normal family conflict, Jason," he said firmly. "This is harassment, possibly stalking. You need professional help." On Michael's recommendation, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lawson, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our first session was revelatory. "What you're describing is a coordinated campaign of emotional abuse," she explained. "Your family is using manipulation tactics, guilt, intimidation, social pressure to override your boundaries." Dr. Lawson helped me develop strategies for setting and maintaining boundaries. We practiced responses to emotional manipulation and worked on techniques to manage my growing anxiety. Most importantly, she validated my decision to protect myself financially and legally, countering the persistent voice in my head suggesting I was overreacting. With growing confidence in my position, I consulted with a family law attorney who filed for a temporary restraining order against Kevin. The judge granted the order based on the documented vandalism, threatening communications, and surveillance evidence. Kevin was legally prohibited from coming within 100 yards of my home, workplace, or person. News of the restraining order triggered the most intense backlash yet. My mother left a 5-minute voicemail sobbing that I had destroyed the family forever. My father's message was simpler. "No son of mine would do this. You're dead to us." Extended family members bombarded me with messages expressing shock and disgust at my extreme reaction to normal family disagreements. The restraining order marked a turning point, the moment when harassment evolved into a more sophisticated campaign of psychological warfare. What had begun as emotional pressure had transformed into something darker, with my own family now committed to a systematic effort to break me down completely. The restraining order, rather than providing relief, seemed to intensify my family's determination. Kevin's approach shifted from direct confrontation to more insidious methods. Within days, fake social media profiles appeared bearing variations of my name and photos. These accounts began sending friend requests to my colleagues and clients, posting offensive content, and making inflammatory comments on professional forums. I discovered the problem when a client called concerned about unprofessional messages they had received. The fake account had contacted several business partners, making derogatory comments and false claims about our company's financial stability. I spent hours contacting platforms to report the impersonation, gathering screenshots as evidence, and reaching out to affected contacts to explain the situation. The workplace incidents began next. My parents appeared unannounced in our company lobby one Tuesday morning, insisting they needed to speak with me about an urgent family health crisis. When our receptionist called me, I could hear my mother crying dramatically in the background. Embarrassed but resolute, I asked security to escort them from the building, explaining they were involved in an ongoing harassment situation. Later that afternoon, my supervisor, Sarah, called me into her office. "Is everything okay in your personal life, Jason? Your performance has been slipping, and now this scene in the lobby." Her concern was genuine, but the implicit message was clear: keep personal problems from affecting work or face professional consequences. That evening, I opened my personal email to find dozens of messages with the subject line, "We know what you did." Each contained the same message: families see everything. Your secrets aren't safe. Though the sender used anonymous accounts, the timing and content left little doubt about their origin. The cumulative stress began reshaping my daily life. I stopped going to my regular gym after spotting Kevin watching me from the parking lot. I declined dinner invitations from friends worried about creating situations where my family could cause embarrassing scenes. My apartment became both sanctuary and prison, the only place I felt marginally secure, yet increasingly isolated. The discovery of the tracking device marked a serious escalation. While washing my car, I noticed an unusual magnetic box attached underneath the rear bumper. The small black device contained a GPS tracker with an active cellular connection. I immediately contacted Detective Jenkins, who documented the device and added it to my growing case file. "This crosses into criminal stalking territory," Jenkins explained, his expression grave. "GPS tracking without consent is illegal in most circumstances. We're taking this very seriously now." Despite the tracker's removal, I began noticing Kevin's presence everywhere, parked near restaurants where I was dining, appearing at stores while I shopped, even following at a distance when I visited friends. The constant surveillance created a persistent state of hypervigilance that Dr. Lawson identified as emerging post-traumatic stress symptoms. "Your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight mode," she explained during our weekly session. "Your body is responding appropriately to a genuine threat, but the sustained nature of this stress is creating long-term psychological impacts." 5 months into the harassment campaign, I arranged a final attempt at reasonable conversation with my parents. We met at a neutral location, a private room at a restaurant with security staff nearby. Their physical appearance shocked me. Both looked significantly older, with my father's previously subtle tremor now pronounced, and my mother's complexion ashen. "This has to stop," I stated firmly. "The harassment, stalking, and intimidation are illegal and destroying everyone involved." Their response revealed the full extent of their enabling behavior. "Family comes first, always," my father insisted. "Kevin needs this business to succeed, and you have the means to make that happen. Everything that's happened is the natural consequence of you turning your back on family. We raised you to look after your brother," my mother added. "If you had just done the right thing, none of this would be happening." The meeting ended with their ultimatum: invest in Kevin's business, and the problems would disappear. I left with the devastating clarity that my parents were not unwitting participants, but active collaborators in the harassment campaign. The realization that reasoning with my family was impossible prompted significant life changes. I sold my house, purchasing instead a condominium in a secure building with 24-hour doorman service-restricted elevator access and comprehensive security systems. I changed my phone number, created new email accounts, and carefully restricted access to my new contact information. For 3 weeks, the security measures appeared effective. The constant alerts from security cameras stopped. The unexpected encounters with Kevin ceased. The barrage of messages from family members slowed to occasional emails, easily filtered into a separate folder. I began sleeping through the night again and regained some of the weight I had lost. The reprieve allowed me to rebuild other areas of my life. I apologized to Sarah for my distracted performance and committed to several high-priority projects to demonstrate my renewed focus. I resumed social activities, joining a hiking group that met on weekends and reconnecting with friends I had been avoiding. This period of calm even allowed space for a potential relationship. I met Alexandra at a technology conference, and our shared professional interests quickly developed into personal connection. After several enjoyable dates, I cautiously explained my family situation, trying to convey the severity without sounding paranoid. Alexandra was initially understanding, but the reality of my circumstances soon proved too intrusive. When we left a restaurant to find Kevin sitting in his car watching us, her unease was visible. After a second incident where she received strange texts from unknown numbers describing her movements that day, Alexandra ended our relationship. "I care about you, Jason," she explained gently, "but I am not equipped to deal with this level of drama and potential danger. I'm sorry." Her departure marked a turning point in my emotional response to the situation. The profound sadness and confusion that had characterized my initial reaction to my family's behavior began transforming into something harder and more focused anger. Not the explosive, destructive anger that Kevin displayed, but a cold, clear determination to end the harassment permanently. I scheduled a consultation with Franklin Morris, a lawyer specializing in stalking and harassment cases. Morris reviewed my extensive documentation, security footage, email threats, witness statements, police reports, and photographs with growing concern. "You have one of the most thoroughly documented cases of family harassment I've seen," Morris concluded. "But criminal charges can be difficult to pursue in family cases unless there's clear evidence of intent to harm or substantial criminal activity." We discussed restraining order violations, establishing patterns of stalking behavior, and preparing for potential escalation. Franklin emphasized the importance of continuing to document everything, while limiting any response that could be twisted to portray me as the aggressor. Meanwhile, Dr. Lawson diagnosed me with adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood, a direct result of the ongoing harassment. "Your physiological responses, insomnia, appetite changes, concentration problems are consistent with sustained trauma exposure," she explained. "We need to prioritize both your psychological and physical safety." As the 7-month mark of continuous harassment approached, I had become a different person, more guarded, less trusting, constantly alert for potential threats. The carefree, optimistic software engineer had been replaced by someone who checked security feeds before sleeping, varied his routes to work, and scrutinized every unexpected communication for hidden threats. What I didn't realize was that Kevin, frustrated by my new security measures and increasingly desperate financially, was preparing to cross a line that would finally transform a family conflict into an unambiguous criminal case. The first sign of trouble came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. While reviewing code at work, my phone buzzed with a security alert from my banking app. Unusual login attempt detected from unrecognized device. I immediately called my bank's fraud department, who confirmed someone had attempted to access my account using correct username information, but failed the multi-factor authentication. The representative flagged my account for additional monitoring but assured me no access had been granted. "Someone might have gotten your username through a data breach," she suggested. "We recommend changing all your passwords as a precaution." That evening, I followed her advice, updating passwords across all financial accounts and enabling additional security features. The incident left me uneasy but seemed potentially unrelated to my family situation until 3 days later, when a more sophisticated attempt occurred. My phone rang at 9:30 in the morning. The caller identified herself as Patricia Wong, branch manager at my local bank, Mr. Thompson, I'm calling to verify a withdrawal request we received this morning. Someone visited our downtown branch attempting to withdraw $40,000 from your savings account. My stomach dropped. I haven't requested any withdrawals. Who tried to make this transaction? A man claiming to be you presented identification and knew several account details, including your social security number and mother's maiden name. Something seemed off about his behavior, so our teller implemented verification protocols. When we called your listed phone number, you obviously weren't the person standing at our counter. I thanked her for the security measures and immediately called Detective Jenkins to report the incident. Within an hour, I was sitting in the police station reviewing security footage from the bank. The video clearly showed Kevin dressed in business attire with his hair styled similarly to mine, presenting documents to a teller. This is attempted bank fraud. Jenkins explained, a serious felony. We're escalating this case immediately. A forensic tech specialist analyzed the previous login attempts and confirmed they originated from an IP address associated with Kevin's apartment. The police obtained a warrant to examine his devices and discovered sophisticated phishing software designed to capture login credentials. More disturbing discoveries followed. During their investigation, police found a collection of my mail and Kevin's apartment bank statements, investment reports, utility bills, providing him with detailed personal information. They also recovered a fake ID card bearing my name and information but featuring Kevin's photograph with subtle alterations to resemble me more closely. The evidence painted a picture of premeditated, calculated identity theft rather than an impulsive act. Kevin had been planning this theft for weeks, gathering information, creating false identification, and researching my accounts for vulnerabilities. Most shocking was the revelation that came during my parents' interview with investigators. When questioned about their knowledge of Kevin's activities, their statements contained damning admissions. Jason has always been selfish with his money, my mother told Detective Johnson. Kevin deserves that money more. He has a business opportunity that would benefit the whole family. My father was even more explicit. We might have suggested that the money should stay in the family one way or another. Kevin has always been impulsive, but his heart was in the right place. These statements transformed my parents from potential witnesses to accomplices in the eyes of investigators. Their knowledge of criminal intent, even if they claimed ignorance of specific plans, made them legally culpable. Detective Johnson called to update me after these interviews. Your family's statements indicate they had prior knowledge of criminal intent against you. We're treating this as a conspiracy case now, not just individual actions by your brother. As the investigation proceeded, Kevin made a fatal mistake. Learning that police had questioned our parents, he left me a threatening voicemail. You think involving the cops will protect you. You've just made everything worse. I know where you live, where you work. There are ways to get what's mine that nobody can trace back to me. The explicit threat combined with the attempted bank fraud gave police sufficient grounds for an arrest warrant. However, Kevin temporarily disappeared, failing to report to his part-time job and vacating his apartment overnight. 3 tense days passed before the confrontation at my condominium. I was returning from work when I spotted Kevin waiting near the service entrance of my building. Immediately alerting security via my phone, I retreated to my car while keeping him in sight. Seeing me, Kevin approached rapidly, his face contorted with rage. "You ruined everything," he shouted, advancing toward my vehicle. "The business was about to launch. Mom and Dad are being questioned by police. This is all your fault." I remained in my locked car as he pounded on the windows. "You owe me that money. You've always had everything handed to you while I struggled. That $200,000 should have been mine." Building security arrived. As Kevin's tirade escalated to specific threats, "I should just end this problem permanently. Nobody would miss you. The family would be better off." The entire confrontation was captured by my dashboard camera and building security footage, providing unambiguous evidence of criminal threatening. Police arrested Kevin on site, adding charges of criminal threatening and violation of the existing restraining order to the pending fraud and identity theft charges. As officers led Kevin away, the magnitude of what had transpired hit me fully. My own brother had systematically gathered my personal information, created false identification, attempted to steal my savings, and ultimately threatened my life, all because I refused to fund a poorly conceived business venture. That night, sitting in my condominium surrounded by security systems and legal documents, I finally acknowledged the painful truth. My family as I had known it was gone, replaced by people willing to justify criminal behavior in the name of family first. The realization brought both grief and strange relief, the clarity of finally seeing the situation without emotional filters. The decision to pursue all available criminal charges came easily after that. This was no longer about family conflict, but about protecting myself from individuals who had demonstrated they would stop at nothing to take what wasn't theirs. With that resolution came the first night of truly restful sleep I'd had in months. Kevin's arrest set in motion legal proceedings that would consume the next 4 months of my life. The district attorney assigned to the case, Veronica Martinez, reviewed the extensive evidence and filed multiple charges: attempted grand larceny, identity theft, stalking, harassment, violation of restraining order, and criminal threatening. The potential penalties included significant jail time. My parents immediately hired Bernard Crawford, an expensive criminal defense attorney known for aggressive tactics. They depleted their savings and took out a second mortgage to cover his $50,000 retainer. Meanwhile, Kevin was released on bail with electronic monitoring and strict conditions prohibiting any contact with me. News of the arrest spread rapidly through our extended family, creating deep divisions. Some relatives expressed shock and support for me, having been unaware of the severity of the situation. My cousin Rachel called to apologize. I had no idea how bad this was. Aunt Linda just said you were being stingy with family. I never imagined Kevin was doing these terrible things. Others doubled down on their support for Kevin, framing the criminal charges as my vindictive overreaction. My Uncle Paul wrote a scathing email: "Blood is thicker than water. Pressing charges against your own brother shows what kind of person you've become." The public nature of the case created professional complications as well. Local business publications ran stories with headlines like "Tech Executive's Brother Arrested in Identity Theft Scheme," mentioning our company by association. Clients called with concerns about security, wondering if their information might be compromised. Sarah called me into her office to address the situation directly. "This isn't your fault, Jason, but it's affecting the company. How can we support you while protecting our reputation?" Her question led to a frank discussion about the case, resulting in unexpected corporate support. Our legal department offered resources to help with my case, and the company issued a statement supporting employees facing personal challenges unrelated to their exemplary professional conduct. Sarah adjusted my project load temporarily, allowing flexibility for court appearances while maintaining my role and salary. The first court hearing was surreal. Entering the courtroom, I saw my parents sitting directly behind Kevin, their faces set in identical expressions of righteous indignation. Kevin himself appeared almost unrecognizable. Gone was the disheveled, angry man who had threatened me. In his place sat someone in a conservative suit, with neatly trimmed hair projecting an image of responsible stability. Crawford's defense strategy became immediately apparent: portray the situation as a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. My client was merely seeking financial support for a legitimate business opportunity from his brother, who has substantially greater resources, he argued during the preliminary hearing. Any alleged improprieties resulted from emotional distress caused by the defendant's brother abandoning family obligations. The prosecution countered with methodical presentation of evidence, bank security footage, digital forensics from Kevin's devices, the collection of stolen mail, the manufactured identification and recorded threats. Martinez emphasized the premeditated nature of the crimes. This wasn't an emotional outburst, but a calculated criminal enterprise involving identity theft, fraud, and sustained harassment. As court dates multiplied, I maintained composed testimony despite the emotional strain. I presented factual accounts of the harassment campaign, the attempted fraud, and the impact on my life, resisting Crawford's attempts to provoke emotional responses that might undermine my credibility. My parents' testimony proved particularly difficult to witness. My mother described me as always cold and calculating, unwilling to help family, painting Kevin as the warm-hearted, misunderstood brother who just needed one chance to succeed. My father characterized the situation as brothers having a disagreement that got out of hand because Jason overreacted by involving authorities. When pressed about their knowledge of Kevin's actions, both parents offered carefully worded responses that acknowledged awareness of his frustration, while denying specific knowledge of criminal plans. Their testimony strained credibility, but demonstrated their unwavering loyalty to Kevin regardless of his actions. The case took an unexpected turn when Martinez called Alan Rickard, Kevin's former business partner from a failed restaurant venture 3 years earlier. Rickard testified that Kevin had previously attempted similar schemes, including using business funds for personal expenses and attempting to open credit accounts using Rickard's information. When confronted, Kevin always blamed others and justified taking what wasn't his as simply collecting what he deserved, Rickard explained. This testimony established a pattern of behavior that severely undermined the defense's portrayal of the current situation as an isolated emotional response. Crawford attempted to discredit Rickard by suggesting financial motivations for his testimony, but the damage was done. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the additional testimony about prior similar conduct, Kevin's composure finally cracked during cross-examination. When Martinez methodically walked through the timeline of planning and executing the fraud attempt, Kevin's carefully constructed facade collapsed. "You don't understand what it's like living in his shadow," Kevin shouted, gesturing wildly toward me. "Everything comes easy for him. Our parents always talked about Jason's success while I struggled, that money should have been mine. He didn't deserve it." The outburst continued until the judge ordered a recess. Crawford looked grim as he led Kevin from the courtroom, knowing his client had just validated the prosecution's characterization of his motives and mindset. After 7 days of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict guilty on all counts except one minor harassment charge. The courtroom was silent as the judge addressed Kevin directly before sentencing. "Family disputes are common, but your actions went far beyond normal conflict," Judge Ramirez stated firmly. "You engaged in calculated criminal behavior targeting your brother, including identity theft, attempted grand larceny, and criminal threatening. Perhaps most disturbing is the evidence that your parents enabled and encouraged this behavior under the misguided notion of family loyalty." Turning to my parents, the judge continued, "While you are not on trial today, the court notes your role in facilitating this situation through financial and emotional support of criminal behavior. Family loyalty does not extend to criminal conspiracy, and parents have a responsibility to discourage, not enable such conduct." Kevin received a sentence that reflected the seriousness of his actions while acknowledging it was his first formal conviction: 18 months probation, restitution for all expenses related to the harassment and fraud attempts totaling nearly $20,000, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and treatment and completion of financial responsibility counseling. Any violation of these terms would result in immediate imprisonment. As the courtroom emptied, my parents approached me directly for the first time in months. My mother's face was streaked with tears, my father's complexion ashen. "Are you happy now?" my mother hissed. "You've destroyed your brother's life over money." "This was never about money," I replied quietly. "This was about boundaries, respect, and criminal behavior. Kevin made his choices, and you supported them every step of the way." My father's response was chilling. "You're no longer our son. Don't contact us again." They turned and walked away, shoulders aligned in unified rejection. Despite anticipating this outcome, the finality of their words created a hollow feeling in my chest. 20 minutes later, as I sat alone in my car in the courthouse parking lot, the full emotional impact hit me. I wept not for the family I had lost, but for the family I had always thought we were connected by love and respect, rather than obligation and control. That evening I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister, whom I'd always been close with, but who had remained silent throughout the ordeal. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you did the wrong thing," she said softly. "Some of us see what really happened here. You're still family to me, Jason." Her words provided a small measure of comfort amid the wreckage of familiar relationships. I had lost my immediate family, but discovered that family connections could exist based on genuine care rather than shared DNA and obligation. The aftermath of the trial brought practical changes as well. I blocked all contact from my parents and Kevin, changing my email addresses and phone number yet again. I moved forward with a civil restraining order that would remain in effect for 5 years, providing longer-term legal protection. The extended family divided into clear factions. Social media became a battlefield of passive-aggressive posts and outright accusations. I disengaged, completely removing family connections from all platforms and focusing instead on rebuilding the parts of my life that had been damaged by the year-long ordeal. Only later would I learn that my parents had published a lengthy Facebook post portraying themselves as victims of an ungrateful son who had used his financial advantage to punish his struggling brother. The post received supportive comments from family members who had heard only their version of events, further cementing the division between factions. Franklin, my attorney, advised me to avoid any public response. "You've won in the eyes of the law," he counseled. "Engaging in social media warfare will only prolong the conflict and your emotional involvement. The truth is documented in court records for anyone who truly wants to know what happened." His advice proved wise. As weeks passed without my participation in the family drama, the intensity of public attacks gradually diminished. The absence of response denied oxygen to the conflict, allowing it to slowly burn itself out in public forums while I focused on private healing. The first step toward that healing was acknowledging the depth of the trauma I had experienced. Dr. Lawson helped me recognize that I was grieving multiple losses simultaneously: the brother I thought I had, the parents I believed loved me unconditionally, and the fundamental sense of security that comes from trusting one's family. "Grief isn't linear," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "You'll have days of anger, days of sadness, and days when you feel nothing at all. All of these responses are normal parts of processing such profound betrayal." With her guidance, I began the slow process of rebuilding my sense of safety and trust. The legal vindication had provided closure on one level, but the emotional wounds required different medicine, time reflection, and the gradual construction of new relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. 6 months after the trial concluded, I sat on the balcony of my condominium watching the sunset, realizing with surprise that I had gone an entire day without thinking about Kevin or my parents. This small victory marked significant progress in my healing journey. The constant hypervigilance had gradually subsided, replaced by increasing periods of normalcy and even occasional joy. My weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Lawson continued evolving from crisis management to deeper exploration of family dynamics and their lasting impacts. "Your parents created a system where Kevin's needs always superseded boundaries," she explained. "That system was destined to collapse when someone finally enforced reasonable limits." Understanding the dysfunctional patterns didn't excuse the behavior, but helped me process the betrayal without internalizing blame. I recognized that my parents' inability to set appropriate boundaries with Kevin throughout his life had created the conditions for escalation when I finally said no. Through Dr. Lawson's recommendation, I joined a support group for adults experiencing family estrangement. Meeting others with similar experiences provided validation and perspective. Some group members had endured decades of manipulation before breaking contact, while others were just beginning their journeys toward healthier boundaries. Family estrangement isn't failure, our group facilitator often reminded us. Sometimes it's the healthiest choice for everyone involved, even if some family members can't see it that way. The group became an essential part of my recovery, offering understanding that even well-meaning friends couldn't provide. These strangers turned confidants recognized the complex grief of family estrangement, mourning relationships that still existed but had become harmful. My professional life flourished as emotional stability returned. Sarah recognized my renewed focus and commitment, recommending me for promotion to Senior Development Director with expanded responsibilities and a substantial salary increase. The position would require relocation to our Denver office, a change that suddenly seemed appealing rather than daunting. "A fresh start in a new city might be exactly what you need," Michael suggested when I shared the news. Sometimes geographical distance creates the space for emotional healing. Denver offered more than professional opportunities. It represented freedom from constant reminders of family trauma. The mountains, the distinctive culture, the distance from Boston, all promised new beginnings, unburdened by painful associations. 3 weeks after accepting the promotion, I arrived in Colorado with 2 suitcases and a carefully curated collection of possessions. I had sold or donated most of my furniture and belongings, keeping only items with positive associations. My new apartment overlooked the Rocky Mountains, providing daily reminder of life's vastness beyond personal troubles. Building a social network from scratch proved challenging, but ultimately rewarding. I joined a local hiking club, volunteered at weekend technology workshops for high school students, and gradually developed genuine friendships unburdened by knowledge of my family history. When questions about family inevitably arose, I offered simple explanations about estrangement, without elaborate details, finding most people respected these boundaries. 8 months into my Denver life, I met Rachel at a professional conference. Our conversation about data visualization techniques extended through dinner and into the following weeks. Unlike my previous attempt at dating, I approached this relationship with greater emotional stability and clearer boundaries. When the time came to explain my family situation, I presented the facts without defensiveness or residual shame. My immediate family and I are estranged following a difficult situation involving criminal behavior, I explained during our 4th date. I've established boundaries that protect my well-being, which means I don't have contact with them currently. Rachel's response was thoughtful and compassionate. Family relationships are complicated, she observed. Healthy boundaries don't mean you didn't love them. They mean you love yourself enough to protect your peace. Her understanding created space for authentic connection, and our relationship developed gradually into something substantial and nurturing. Rachel had experienced her own family difficulties, giving her perspective without identical baggage. She respected my boundaries while offering support during difficult milestones like holidays and birthdays, times when family absence felt most acute. The grief of family estrangement arrived in unpredictable waves. Certain triggers: Christmas commercials featuring happy families, Father's Day card displays, even the scent of my mother's signature apple pie at a local bakery could temporarily transport me back into feelings of loss. I learned to acknowledge these emotions without letting them overwhelm my present life. With Dr. Lawson's guidance continuing through video sessions, I developed rituals to honor important memories while recognizing the necessity of current boundaries. On my parents' anniversary, I donated to charities supporting healthy family dynamics. On Kevin's birthday, I volunteered at addiction recovery centers, recognizing that his issues, while never excusing his behavior, likely included untreated problems beyond simple jealousy. I constructed a new understanding of family that transcended biological connections. My circle included Michael and his wife, who invited me for holiday celebrations; Rachel, whose patient understanding created safe harbor; colleagues who had supported me through the crisis; and fellow estrangement group members who understood the unique grief I experienced. 15 months after relocating to Denver, I traveled to Boston for a company-wide strategic planning meeting. Despite anxiety about returning to the city associated with so much trauma, the trip was necessary for my career advancement. I prepared carefully with Dr. Lawson, developing coping strategies for potential family encounters in this smaller city where such meetings remained statistically possible. The theoretical became reality during dinner at an upscale restaurant near the conference center. Across the dining room sat my parents, immediately recognizable, despite visible aging beyond their years. My father's hand trembled noticeably as he lifted his water glass. My mother's hair had turned completely gray. Our eyes met simultaneously, creating a moment of frozen recognition. After brief hesitation, they approached my table, their expressions unreadable mixtures of emotion. "Jason," my father acknowledged stiffly. "You look well." The awkward conversation that followed revealed little about their current circumstances beyond vague mentions of retirement planning. They asked superficial questions about my work, while carefully avoiding any mention of Kevin or past events. The interaction carried the surreal quality of strangers attempting to navigate unmapped territory. As they prepared to leave, my mother touched my arm hesitantly. "We've been thinking about everything that happened," she said, voice wavering slightly. "Maybe we could talk sometime." I considered her words carefully before responding. "I'm open to conversation under certain conditions," I replied. Any relationship moving forward would require acknowledgement of what occurred, accountability for enabling harmful behavior, and family therapy to establish healthy patterns. Without those elements, contact would simply perpetuate old dynamics. My father's expression hardened momentarily before softening into something resembling resignation. "We'll think about it," he said simply. They departed without further commitment, leaving me with complex emotions, but also a surprising sense of strength. I had stated my boundaries clearly without anger or defensiveness, progress that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. 3 weeks after returning to Denver, I received an unexpected letter with a Boston postmark. The return address belonged to a rehabilitation facility, where, according to the enclosed letter, Kevin had been residing for 4 months, following alcohol poisoning that nearly claimed his life. Kevin's handwritten message expressed what appeared to be genuine remorse. "I can never undo the harm I caused you. My actions were inexcusable, driven by jealousy, entitlement, and untreated mental health issues. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm finally getting help and taking responsibility for my choices." The letter concluded with no requests or expectations, simply an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and acceptance of consequences. I sat with the letter for several days, consulting with Dr. Lawson about an appropriate response. Eventually, I sent a brief reply, acknowledging his steps toward recovery without promising renewed contact. "Thank you for taking responsibility. I wish you well in your healing journey and hope you find peace. My forgiveness is possible, but trust would require sustained change demonstrated over time. I need to maintain current boundaries for my well-being." This exchange represented neither reconciliation nor continued estrangement, but something more nuanced: acknowledgement that people can change while recognizing that healing happens at different paces for different parties. My recovery couldn't be contingent on Kevin's rehabilitation, yet neither did his recovery efforts require my participation to be valuable. Looking back on the 2-year journey from initial conflict to present stability, I recognized fundamental truths that had transformed my understanding of family boundaries and self-worth. First, genuine love never requires sacrificing your financial security or accepting abuse. Family members who demand such sacrifices are expressing control rather than affection. Second, establishing boundaries isn't selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships. Without limits, relationships become vehicles for exploitation rather than mutual support. Third, family defined solely by DNA is meaningless without respect, trust, and genuine care. The most supportive people in my life during crisis had no biological connection to me. Fourth, healing isn't linear. Some days still brought sadness for what might have been, but these feelings no longer dominated my experience or defined my identity. Most importantly, I learned that protecting yourself from harm is both a right and a responsibility. By establishing consequences for unacceptable behavior, I had not only preserved my own well-being, but potentially created conditions for my family members to recognize their unhealthy patterns. My story contains no magical reconciliation or perfect closure, just the authentic journey of someone who discovered that sometimes loving yourself means walking away from people who cannot respect your boundaries, even when those people share your blood. Today I live with an open heart but clear boundaries, grateful for the genuine connections that emerged from painful loss. While I remain open to future communication with family members who demonstrate real change, my well-being no longer depends on relationships that once seemed essential but proved destructive. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? Drop a comment below sharing your experience, what helped you maintain those boundaries when others pushed back. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more authentic life experiences, and share with someone who might need permission to prioritize their well-being over harmful family expectations. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving choice you can make is protecting your peace even from those who should have protected you.